If you went into an arcade with a mate around 1987 or 1988, I'm willing to bet this rather beat up looking Amiga 500 that you and said friend of choice would have spent some of your silver in your pocket on Tato's massively successful belt scroll beat 'em up game Double Dragon. The extent of its popularity made it the highest grossing arcade game in North America in both 1988 and 1989, which is quite frankly insane if you remember that such games as Operation Wolf, Afterburner and even Robocop all existed in the same space. Starting life as a sequel to the successful Renegade beat-em-up arcade game the year before, Kishimoto's sequel took enough turns to stand up on its own merits. With two-player co-op, or even two-player knock the shit out of each other, and the ability to pick up items and weapons, even those used by the baddies that come at you thick and fast, smashing detailed backdrops and beautiful graphics, bosses, music, seamless levels and a difficulty level that kept you interested enough to keep you pumping in your money. It was all very much here and very exciting on the few times I played it when the fair was in town or a trip to the seaside was on the cards. This infrequent lack of game time though meant there was a definite waiting with bated breath for the home computer offerings that followed in 1988 and at a push 1989. If I ever do any videos on the worst games of say this system, and probably more so on this system, in the comments somewhere somebody is going to mention how crap or disappointing the home ports of Double Dragon were. But is this true? I'll get to my experiences with the Speccy version in a bit, which is the only one I had access to, but surely all those different ports on all those different systems that managed to get a game out whilst the arcade game was firmly and very much still in our sights, there is at least one that stands up as a decent representation of the arcade original, no? Ocean on their Imagine label didn't get the rights to the game, so they made their own Renegade sequel, which is still one of my, if not my favourite game on the ZX Spectrum of all time. So how bad can the actual ports be? So I'm going to play all the versions available to me in the UK when the game first came out in around 1988 and 1989. Anything after this doesn't matter, almost. There has been countless versions of the game, almost up to the present day, on your Nintendo Wii's, Game Boy Advanced, Nintendo Switch, Mega Drive, Xbox. Don't actually have an Xbox. And yes, I'm aware some of these are just ports of existing versions, but the ship had sailed by then. I want to know if Christmas morning 1987, if you woke up to find your parents, or Father Christmas depending on your belief system, had gone batshit Christmas computer crazy and put a Commodore Amiga, a Nintendo Entertainment System, two Amstrad CPCs, an Atari 2600 or VCS or Woody or whatever you want to call it, a Commodore 64, an IBM compatible PC, a Sega Master System, an Atari 7800, a ZX Spectrum and an Atari ST under your tree. What a Christmas that would have been, eh? Could you have purchased a good version of Double Dragon the following year and at a stretch the year after? Well, I'm about to realise that dream, but with a fair scoring system. So if the port sucks ass and is bad, it will get any number of these Michael Jacksons. The more Michael Jacksons, the worse the game is. But if the game is not terrible but not good either, it's just all right, then it will get any number of Supergrasses. And finally, if by some chance we find something that is actually good, then it will get any number of Tina Turners. Nintendo Entertainment System version, developer Technos, publisher Tradewest, 1990. I failed already, haven't I? Controversially in this list, as yes, it did come out in Japan in 1988, but us European folk had to wait 2 years to get hold of our copies in 1990. But I'm going to let it sneak in because it just about makes it into our narrow timeline, and it's also rather interesting. First off the bat is the biggest problem with the release: no two-player. Well, there is, but not in the way you think. More on that in a moment. But yes, massively disappointing alternating playtime with 2 players, which is a really big shame. The fact there are only 2 enemies on the screen at any one time probably indicates this is a restriction based on how this game is put together on this hardware, and maybe to reduce sprite flicker, which is present at times but not as bad as, say, the Master System version, which is coming up in a bit. Levels seem to play along and then go off and do their own thing and come back again, a bit of a hodgepodge really. The controls are janky and you earn different moves as you go, which I didn't like. Some of which, like jump kits, are activated by pressing both the A and B buttons together, which is not great also. Weapons and special moves all do seem to be present, and to make up for the lack of 2-player, there is this Street Fighter-esque mode where you can select characters from the game to fight 1v1. It's all very odd and very much feels like we know it's shit, there's no 2-player game in a game called Double Dragon, so we lump this in to make up for it. Music is present at least and is not too annoying either, which is a plus. But on the whole, the game just feels like they really dropped a ball not figuring out how to do 2 players at once here and do it well. This really should have been renamed Single Dragon. Atari 2600. Developer Activision, publisher Activision, released around early 1989. Now, why on earth were they still chucking out 2600 games in the late 80s when even by their own hardware offerings Atari themselves had moved on somewhat is a mystery, but here we are with Double Dragon on the VCS. I can't imagine there are many beat-em-ups on this system, so this probably ranks quite highly in that chart, if you forget it's a Double Dragon game. As a Double Dragon game though, the limitations of the system are too much for it to even get close. And that's not to say it's a bold attempt though. I mean, we have weapons and varying bad guys, of which I can only show you through other people's gameplay because this is rock hard to progress in. The enemies will kick the crap out of you in mere seconds, and I'm not sure I made it off the second screen, let alone the second level. The controls are quite janky, but quite a few of the moves are present at least. There is a 2-player versus mode, which is the same as the NES version, but there is also a 2-player co-op mode, kind of. It sort of splits the screen and only one enemy can attack at any one time. It's clearly a workaround to the system's limitations and just about gets away with it. So yeah, the 2600 had a 2-player and the NES didn't. Go figure. Levels are really just screens with a backdrop that gives a nod to the arcade original, and it really is just fight a couple of guys, new backdrop, fight a couple of guys, new backdrop, fight a couple of guys, new backdrop, fight a couple of guys, new backdrop. Oh, shut up now. But I can't help but be impressed with this though, and it does come with the best artwork full stop, with a warrior-esque look and feel to it. If you were that kid who only had great Uncle Derek's hand-me-down VCS to play with in 1989, I reckon you might have been happy with this one. ZX Spectrum version, developer Binary Designs, publisher Melbourne House. So this was my version, and I have to say at the time I was pretty disappointed. Target Renegade showed how to do a game like this on the ZX Spectrum, so this never really stood a chance when standing in Target's shadow. On its own though, it's not too terrible. Firstly, the choice of backdrop does affect how good our colour changing characters look. When the backdrop is plain, it's not so much of an issue and looks okay, but if the detail is ramped up, so is the difficulty in seeing your character on screen. All the arcade parts are here. Weapons, barrels, ladders and bosses all play a part, with arcade levels aplenty, albeit in multi-load madness. Moves are also in abundance, but the controls are not great here. When a lot is going on screen, there is a little bit of slowdown, and it's hard to time punches and kicks right sometimes. I mean, enemies can hit you when not lined up, so you can't always retaliate, which is frustrating, and the whole thing seemed pretty tough. There is a 2-player option though, and when not much is going on, it does zip along handsomely. I think if they just tweaked the gameplay a little bit and made the attacks quicker or easier to use, the game would have massively benefited from it. Sound is non-existent too, although I really liked the squeak the bad ladies gave when they were hit by a bat. This is interestingly the same squeak you get when you kiss the girl at the end. Maybe I'm not such a great kisser after all. Amstrad CPC 64K version. Developer Binary Design, converted by Animagic, and published by Melbourne House. Well, shit certainly gets real pretty quick here, with seemingly two versions of the game released on the Amstrad line of home computers. One was a 128K disc-only affair, and the other, this one, a 64K version, more commonly found on cassette tapes, and something that seemed to surface on many a compilation. Both versions were developed by Binary Designs and Melbourne House, going out on a Mastertronic or Virgin labels, and hardly any magazine reviews and conflicting information make it difficult to get to the bottom of what the heckles is going on here. But there were two different versions that both appeared within our timeline, so I better get on with it with our first to feature here in our list, the 64K version. And well, here it is then. Even more confusing, as I could only get a Spanish version of the game, but anyways, it's not all as confusing as trying to do some of the basics needed here to play the blimmin' thing. First up, it looks really good. It looks like an Amstrad CPC version of Double Dragon. It's what you would expect. Most things appear to be here, although no barrels were present at the end of level 1, but there were knives, whips and so on. The biggest problem though, the massive problem though, is speed. It's beyond slow, it's barely playable, and a striking reminder of what we actually put up with back in the day, because now this feels almost unplayable, and suddenly I'm longing for the garbled graphical mess of the 128K version, which you will see shortly. With two players, you might have stuck with this for that slightly fun element, but generally, fun this most certainly isn't. Commodore 64 version, developer Binary Designs, publisher Melbourne House, 1989. Wow. Okay, well, the title screen music is nice, and yes, that's the review if you didn't want to say anything negative here. Okay, there is two players at least, and the backdrop of the levels at least did match my expectations on how this would look as a Commodore 64 port. It's not too shabby actually. You can't climb ladders, so it is just a backdrop, which is a shame. The protagonists look like they are chopped in half and often disappear or glitch as you move them around. Now, the programmers were aware that the characters in this game looked a bit shit, so they even included a note in the instructions trying to defend their actions. A note from the programmers. Dear games player, during our Herculean task of cramming as many possible of the multitude of animation and graphical elements that make up the arcade game into the Commodore 64, we were faced with a problem. To get both one and two player options and to achieve the authentic feel of the two player simultaneous action simply took more memory than we had available. Oh dear. But we knew how disappointed you would be if the game didn't have the same two player mode as the arcade game you know and love, which is fair. So we came up with a memory saving solution. Oh yes, we implemented sprite stacking techniques to create the animated characters, using two smaller sprites instead of one larger one to create each figure. Okay. The resulting small gap you may notice in the characters at waist level is the compromise that the architecture of the C64 forced us to make. This should not impair your enjoyment of the game in any way. The programmers. Interesting. Interesting also as this on cassette tape was a multi-load hellhole. Even though all the arcade moves are apparently present, I tended to find that a hit once and run away strat seemed to work most of the time. Limited weapons appeared pretty useless, well the whip anyways, as the baseball bat seemingly disappeared before I could try and use it. Boss characters are non-existent early on here, and even later on are same size normal looking baddies. The controls are horrid, jankiness personified, and it all just feels lazy on a system that could have quite easily been one with a decent port on it if the right software house got involved. Ocean did release a cartridge version outside of our time frame in 1991, but apparently that didn't fare any better anyways, so maybe the programmers were right after all. Atari 7800, developer Imagineering Incorporated, publisher Activision. released 1989. A step up on hardware then from the 2600 should have a better crack at Double Dragon, no? Well, yes it does, as can be seen here straight away as you kickstart level 1. 2-player simultaneous play is in, which is nice. A bunch of the weapons also made it, as did some of the moves. No climbing up ladders here, not that you would probably want to, as the controls are a little janky and can feel slow to respond, as does everything here really. The enemies on display are okay, with a few on screen at any one time, but lots of them look like ginger cousins of our protagonist, which is a shame, but I guess it was a resource cutting measure. The sound is okay, although I'm not sure the 7800 was known for its fantastic music, so that can be forgiven. And all in all, it's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's just alright. Sega Master System, developed and published by Sega in 1988. Okay, first thing to note is this has simultaneous 2 players, yay. So why could they not manage it on the NES port, eh? So a massive win already. Graphically it looks okay, and again compared to the NES port does a pretty good job. It's as close to the arcade as it could be really. It does suffer quite badly from the flashing spritey thing when lots are going on, which is even more of an issue when in 2-player mode. And although this does detract from the game a little, I would still rather have 2 players and the flashy sprites than not have it at all. Levels played out in a fairly similar vein to the arcade, which was nice. No ladders and fewer baseball bats it seems, but this was more than made up for when you get to throw Sega branded boxes around. I mean, come on. Sound is okay, it's not going to blow your socks off, but it is serviceable enough. I mean, sure, there will be better side-scrolling beat-em-ups on this system, but as far as a port of Double Dragon goes, it's not bad actually. Commodore Amiga version, developed by Binary Designs and Richard Applin, and published by Melbourne House, late 1988. Now, you might think the grunt of the 16-bit Amiga might be enough here for a decent port, and well, you'd mostly be wrong. There is a nice front screen that plays a nice enough tune, which unfortunately doesn't carry on into the game. All we get here are generic punch and kick sounds, with the odd baddie seemingly throwing up when beaten to a pulp. It scrolls quite nicely and the backdrop looks lovely and is pretty faithful to the arcade port. We get the same bad guys, although some just look like palette swapped billies, and weapons to pick up are all seemingly present. Kicks, jumps, punches, etc. are nicely mapped out for the 1-button joystick, and I don't have a Double Dragon loving friend to play with, but I did briefly start player 2 just to see if I could beat up my partner here, and yes, very much you can. There was a notable slowdown at the end of level 1 fight boss attack, and for some reason you can climb ladders and fences, albeit looking rather silly whilst doing so, but cannot get to the top of them for some inexplicable reason, on the first level at least. Our protagonist moves around like he is on roller skates, and it all feels a little bit glitchy and framey, honestly. The score and life section at the top of the screen jittered about when I was playing. It did it less when I was playing on my actual Amiga 500, but I generally had the same experience as I did there emulating on the same machine. It's okay, I guess, but really feels like they missed an opportunity to do something fantastic on one of the more capable machines at the time. It's not horrendous, but it's not great either, and I did manage to complete level 1 really easily, so I do wonder how much of a challenge this game offers. Amstrad CPC 128K version, developed by Binary Designs, Richard Applin, and published by Melbourne House, 1988. So the 128K disc version, coded by Richard Applin, was the first of the 2 CPC versions I played. And the first thing that strikes you here are the god-awful graphics. I mean, it's clearly been lifted as is from a version on a better 16-bit system and squeezed into the CPC's graphic capabilities. I mean, just look at me standing in front of this poster, it's just a garbled mess of colours. That aside, it sounds okay. And more importantly, it plays pretty bloody well. All the moves are here, 2 players at once, plenty of bad guys on the screen at any given time with very little slowdown. It has a fair representation of the arcade levels, and it's certainly more of a challenge compared to the Amiga and Atari ST versions, which I think make up for just how bad the graphics are. If you squint whilst playing this is a bloody terrific port. Atari ST version, developer Binary Designs, Richard Applin again, and published by Melbourne House in 1988. This feels almost identical to the Amiga port, although here you can climb ladders and our protagonist doesn't look as much of a twat when he moves around. The sketchy sound effects are all here though, as is the really easy gameplay, making this game a breeze, especially if you pick up a baseball bat, which takes out foes on the backswing too, which is quite funny. It has all the elements included from the arcade original though, and is very, if not too playable, but probably quite a bit of fun in 2 players for the short time it probably took to complete the game. Better sound and a little more difficulty and this would have been the perfect port for me, but this does feel like the version the Amiga game was ported from and not the other way around, if that makes sense, which is why it sits above it in the chart. Oh, and you can go up ladders too. Bonus. The PC MS-DOS version, developed and published by Arcadia in 1988. Tough one this one, as I wasn't sure if I got the speed right in DOSBox for a 386SX running this EGA at the time. It seemed zippy enough when not much was happening, but did slow down when lots was on screen, so it's difficult to comment if the playability is affected or not. That being said, although in EGA the graphics are somewhat less than desirable, this is a pretty decent port though. Everything from the arcade version is pretty much present. All the weapons and bad guys are here. The challenge of killing the baddies seems very close to the arcade original, more so than the Amiga and Atari ports, which I thought this might be a direct rip from. The use of the baseball bat is one of the most satisfying gaming actions, full stop. You can climb everywhere and the bad guys even follow you, which seems a first here. 2 players very much present too, with all the beat each other up features included. Barrels, knives, everything is here. It did glitch sometimes though, once I got stuck at the end of level 1 and it wouldn't start the next one, and I did read reviews from a lot of other people saying that the game often crashed and was therefore hard to complete. Sound is also really lacking, which was often the case with these early DOS games, but all that aside, despite its flaws, it's one of the most playable versions here, albeit not the prettiest to look at, with poop sounds and random crashes. It's almost a teener, but yeah, more of a supergrass for me. So there we have it, conclusive proof with 3 Michaels, 7 supergrasses and 1 Tina. It wasn't all utter bobbins, with around 30% of our Christmas offerings providing something that can be best described as a bit wank, but around 60% were okay. Some of you might have actually liked these ports, but most would have felt a little let down, but not felt like you had been shut on from a great height. And finally, 1 Tina. Yes, okay, the Amstrad CPC 128K version does look a bit poop, but damn, this was good for the CPC, and it still plays well today. So happy days for all those lucky Amstrad 128K owners, eh? As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who gets drunk next to you. And if I haver, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who's havering to you. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more to be the man working. Yes, I know I'm gonna be the man who's working hard for you. And when the money comes in for the work I do, I'll pass almost every penny on to you. When I come home, oh, I know I'm gonna be the man who comes back home to you. And if I broke, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who's growing over you. But I would walk 500 miles and I would walk 500 more just to be a man who walks 1,000 miles to fall down at your door. When I'm lonely, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who's lonely without you. And when I'm dreaming, well, I know I'm gonna dream about the time when I'm with you. When I go out, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. And when I come home, yes, I know I'm gonna be the man who comes back home with you.